Hey everyone, TV here and welcome to my new YouTube video. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the best ways to reach Mythic Ranking. Mythic Ranking is the highest rank you can reach on Magic Arena, and there are some tips and tricks that you can use to get there every single season. The first question you might be asking is, why would I want to reach Mythic Ranking to begin with? What do I have to gain from that? And there are a couple reasons. It could be because of personal achievement, right? Maybe you just want to beat the game. Reaching Mythic is the highest rank that you can reach on Magic Arena, and it is the equivalent of, beating Diablo in Hell if you're playing Diablo 2. It is basically beating the game. So you could be trying to reach Mythic just for that. Or you could be someone who is trying to get into the content creation business and you want validation for your work. Because it's much easier to sell what you're saying if you have something to back it up. For example, hey, look at my Gruul deck guide from someone who's been high Mythic with the deck 3 seasons in a row. That's attractive. That draws people to your work. So that could be a reason as well. But the most practical reason why someone would want to reach Mythic Ranking is to get an entryway into the competitive and professional scene. If you want to get into the competitive and eventually professional scene, there are a couple ways you can do that. The first one is finding a third-party tournament circuit. For example, StarSeedGames.com. StarSeed Games holds tournament circuits that qualify you directly for the top-level tournament. So you can do that. But the most normal way is to go through Mythic Ranking, specifically Mythic Ranking 1200. So this means that every time you reach Mythic, you get a percentage or a rank, right? It gives you 98%, 99%, eventually, you're Mythic 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000, up all the way to Mythic number 1, right? That's the highest ranked person at any given time. At the end of each month, they take a snapshot of those rankings, and the top 1,200 gets qualified for a qualifier. Then, if you do well in this qualifier, you get to the bigger tournaments, right? And then if you do well in the bigger tournaments, you effectively get to the big leagues. So everything goes through Mythic Ranking, specifically Mythic Ranking 1200, and that can be in either format. So in today's video, we're going to talk about two different concepts. The first one is reaching Mythic, and the second one is reaching Mythic 1200, which is the threshold that you need to reach in any given season to be able to qualify for this, big qualifier. The first question in a lot of people's minds is whether it's easier to reach Mythic in Limited or in Constricted. And I think the answer here depends on what your end goal is. Obviously, this is assuming that you're equally proficient in both or roughly equally proficient in both, right? If you've never played Limited in your life, but you're a master Constricted player, obviously you should be playing Constricted regardless of what else I say. But assuming you have the ability to play both, I think to reach Mythic specifically, it doesn't really matter which one you play. I would say they're pretty equivalent, so just play whichever one you like more. But to reach Mythic 1200, Limited is easier. Why? Because there are just a lot less people playing. So it is a numbers game. A lot of the time, if you reach Mythic in Constricted, you start at a percentage, right? You're 98%, you have to win a lot more once you get there to reach that top 1200, and it's a lot more volatile. So you could, go to sleep at 900 and wake up at 1500 the other day because a lot more people are playing it and ranks shift a lot more. In Limited, this doesn't happen to the same degree because there are less people playing, so there are less Mythic players. So once you get to Mythic in Limited, you might already be top 1200, and you might stay top 1200 there forever until the end of the season. So in this regard, it is definitely easier to reach top 1200 in Limited than in Constricted. Another thing you can do in Limited and not in Constricted is to choose which matches you're actually going to play. So this is not something I'm necessarily recommending because I think it's not in the spirit of what the competition is trying to be. So it feels like, sort of like cheating the system. It's not something that I've ever done, but it is something that you can do, and it is something that some people will do, so you should be aware that it is possible. When you draft a deck, when you play Limited, you draft a deck, right? And then you have the option of playing this deck if it's good, or not playing it if it's not good. So you draft a deck, it's good, you play your matches, you win or lose rankings based on that. If your deck is bad, you never even get to play it. You just discard it and start a new draft. This is the equivalent of, playing Constricted, and then once you see you're faced with a bad matchup, you drop from the tournament and this match doesn't count. In Constricted, you don't have the ability to do that. Once you know your matchup, you're committed to it. In Limited, you do have this ability. So it is a way of gaining faster rankings and more reliably gain rankings in Limited to just not play your bad decks, only play your good decks. Again, not something I've ever done, not something I'm necessarily recommending, but be aware that if you're willing to throw money into the system to get to Mythic a little bit faster, this is the way to do that. The caveat for this is that all the qualifying tournaments that you're trying to get to are constricted. None of them are limited. So they can be historic, they can be standard, but they will never be limited. At least so far, we haven't had any that are limited. Maybe this will change in the future. This means that time spent getting to high mythic limited rankings is not going to be useful to your actual end goal. So for example, imagine I spend 15 days trying to get to the mythic ranking in limited. I succeed. I now have to spend the next 15 days practicing constricted to do well in this tournament. That is my end goal, right? My end goal is qualifying for the professional or competitive scene. So I have to do well in this one tournament, and that's going to be standard. So even though it took me less time to reach mythic, it will take me maybe more time to get to a proficient level in constricted because I've been playing limited, right? Whereas if I've been playing constricted the whole time, maybe it takes me 25 days to get to mythic 1200. Maybe it takes me 29 days. But all this time counts as practice because this is the same format that I'll be playing in the qualifier. So you really have to judge what situation you were in. So if I'm a player that's been, I'm already very proficient with my constructed deck, and then I have 5 days to get to mythic to qualify for this tournament, I'm going to play limited, assuming I'm equally good at both, because I think that is the faster way to reach mythic 1200. But if I'm someone who's starting at the beginning of the month, and I don't feel that comfortable with a deck yet, I have a month to practice, then perhaps it is better to just be playing constructed this entire time, because if you get there, then you already have all this bank of knowledge to draw from. The next question you might have is, should I play best of 1 or should I play best of 3? If you play best of 1 and you win or lose, you move 1 star in either direction. If you play best of 3, you move 2 stars, and that's whether you win 2-0 or 2-1. So if we consider that a sequence of games is a 2-0 victory for you, which means you win 2 games in a row, it doesn't matter whether these games are against the same opponent in a best of 3 or against a different opponent in best of 1. You're going to move 2 stars in either direction, either a 2-0 win or an 0-2 loss. Right? So in that case, they're equivalent. The difference comes when you win 2-1 or when you lose 1-2. If you win 2-1 in a best of 3 match, you get 2 stars. But if you win a sequence of, if you play a sequence of 3 games and win 2 of them in best of 1, you only move up 1 star. And the opposite is also true. If you go 1-2 in a best of 3, you're moving down 2 stars. If you go 1-2 in a best of 1 in a sequence of 3 games, you're only moving down 1 star. So all you have to do is look at which one of those is more common, a 2-1 win or a 1-2 loss. And if a 2-1 win is more common, you're better off playing best of 3. If a 1-2 loss is more common than a 2-1 win, then you're better off playing best of 1. But since you're trying to get to Mythic, and especially Mythic 1200, I'm going to assume that you have a positive win rate, because I would say that is the first step to getting there. So for anyone with a positive win rate, assuming the win rate is the same for best of 1 and best of 3, which is obviously not a given, but assuming it's the same, best of 3 will be faster for you to climb because your 2-1 wins are just worth more, right? And your 1-2 losses are also worth more in the other direction, but your 2-1 wins are going to be more common because you have an over 50% win rate. To be able to use the next tip that I have for you, it pays off to understand how Mythic ranking actually works. So if you're trying to get to Mythic and you don't care what point you get there, you just want to get there, then it is mostly a numbers game, right? Because each time you win, you're going to win a star. Each time you lose, you're going to lose a star. So if you have an over 50% win rate, you will get to Mythic, even if it takes a very long time. So even if you're just above 50%, that is enough to get you to Mythic as long as you play a lot. Once you reach Mythic ranking, if you want to actually get to top 1200 for that qualification, things change because now you're much more punished for your losses. So, winning a match and losing a match does not put you in the same spot. Normally, you could be ranked 1,000, you win a match, you go to 900, you lose a match, you go to 1,200. So it is worse to just go 1-1 once you're already in Mythic, but not if you're trying to get to Mythic. This means your approach to getting to Mythic should be very different than your approach once you are in Mythic. So to get to Mythic, you should be, for the most part, trying to play a faster deck, even if it is slightly worse. So if you have a deck that has, a 60% win rate, but each match takes an hour, that's not a good deck to get to Mythic because it would just take you an infinity amount of time, even if your win rate is quite good. It is much better to play a deck that, has a 58% win rate, so a worse win rate, but finishes matches in 10 minutes. Because you get a lot more matches in. And it is just a numbers game. You don't care if you lose as long as you win another match right after that. If you're trying to get to Mythic to begin with, just play a faster deck. Do not play a slow deck, even if it is the best deck in the format. That is not the best way to get to Mythic. Once you're in Mythic, then your losses are much more punishing and your wins much more important. So your win rate, the average of wins over losses that you have is a much more important number. So at that point, you should play the better deck, even if it takes longer, but not before. Not before you actually get to Mythic. For getting to Mythic, it is a numbers game, and speed is more important than win rate for the most part. In the same vein, if you're trying to get to Mythic, you should probably be conceding your matches a lot faster than you currently are. A lot of people have this mentality that, if I'm 3% to win this game, I'm going to stay in it. I'm going to fight. I'm never going to give up. You're going to have to pry this win out of my cold dead hands, and I'm never giving up until I'm 0% to win. And while that is an honorable approach, that is not the best approach for actually reaching Mythic ranking. Because if you are 3% to win, you should stay in a game where you're very unlikely to win. This is just 10-15 minutes that you waste in a match that you're almost certainly going to lose, right? And this is 10-15 minutes that could be put into just playing another match, right? Because it doesn't matter that you lose. If you lose once, as long as you win one time right after that, that already makes up for it. So your losses aren't as punishing. If you're just trying to get to Mythic, a loss is just the same as a win. So just take your loss, right? Even if you had a 3% chance of winning, if the game is going to extend too much, just take your loss and move on. Play a different game. It is much better for your, for the speed that you actually get to Mythic to just give up on games that are hopeless and playing a different game. However, if you're already in Mythic and you want to get top 1200, then it's a different situation because then, again, your losses are way more punishing. So you should be trying your best to win because you cannot make up for one loss with one win. You have to win a lot of matches to make up for one loss. So at this point, it becomes worth staying in the game for that 3-5% chance to win because a win matters a lot more once you're already Mythic than before when you're trying to get to Mythic. So you need to understand that the rank behaves in two very different ways, and your approach to getting there should be different whether you're already in Mythic or whether you're trying to get to Mythic to begin with. That's what I have for you today. These are my best tips for getting to Mythic ranking as quickly and as reliably as possible. And obviously they're very generic tips, and they're not going to work for every single person. Right? If you're a person that, I understand that my win rate is positive, so I should be playing best of 3, but I just enjoy playing best of 1 a lot more, or I win a lot more in best of 1 than in best of 3. Well, then you should play best of 1. I don't like playing fast decks. Well, then you can play slow decks, right? This is just a generic advice for you to get to Mythic ranking as quickly as possible for things that you might not have thought about before. If you like this video, make sure to check out my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/PVDDR. The link will be in the description. It's totally optional. But if you want to support my work a little bit more and get some extra perks on top of that, that is the place for you to go. And special thank you to my biggest supporters so far. There are Geoffrey Whitehead, Mattia Giardini, and OCD. Thank you a lot for the support, and I'll see you next week.